Um, Hello everyone. I am Carla Kopp. I am a game designer, developer, and publisher. And today I'm here with the Gary Alaka. He's the operations manager for Gap Closer Games. He's designed Rival Restaurants Back for Seconds, and he's on the board of directors at GAMA, which is the Game Manufacturers Association. Um, Gary, thank you for being here. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, let's see. I've been in this industry about 3 years now, so still very, very new to the industry. Like you said, so my friends and I essentially worked on rival restaurants and the expansion. It's kind of what got us into this hobby, and since then, I've kind of tried to kind of figure out the just the whole publishing thing, what it looks like, and just always happy to learn new things and connect with other designers.
Great. Um, Today we're talking about organic marketing. For people that don't know what organic marketing is, can you kind of like define it?
Yeah. So I guess if we take a step back and what is marketing, right? We tend to think of it as the activities or the things that a business does to either build brand awareness or product awareness, with really the end goal being to make a sale, right? So in our case, right, we're trying to sell board games. So marketing can be either organic or it can be paid. Paid is what you think of like buying ads and things of that nature, whereas organic is a bit more well organic. It's a bit more word of mouth. It's utilizing different platforms to build an audience and then speak to the audience directly. It could be things like reviewers talking about your game. So it's building awareness through relationships rather than through spending money on the actual
Yeah.
platforms.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely a good definition of it. And I definitely prefer the organic marketing strategy versus the paid marketing because I don't know, I don't get joy from Facebook ads. Um,
Mhm.
so what are some of your favorite ways to organically market your games?
Um, so it's funny. I was thinking about this, and I would have said like, oh, my favorite way is through conventions. Um, but I'm not sure if I can count conventions as organic marketing since we're technically paying to be before that audience. So I would say the truest sense of organic marketing that I enjoy is going to like play groups or going to, this is again when things were open, and meeting people, playing the game with them, and then them walking away being like, oh, like that was really cool, right? Like where can I get this? So I see it as thing, where the end result doesn't have to be like, oh, they buy the game. It's more so now they're aware of it, again, if they want to. So I think it's the face-to-face event style organic marketing that I really enjoy.
Yeah, I really like how you look at it, where you talk about how the end result is just the awareness of the game versus like somebody buying it.
Mhm,
And why I like that is like a much easier like metric. Like it's much easier just to like tell somebody about the game and uh to do that instead of like, oh, did they actually buy it? Like, because, like, people buy things later on, they could buy it
mhm,
at their friendly local game store. Like, you're not quite sure, or at least I'm never quite sure, like, how somebody decided to buy it, but, like, I can be sure, like, "Oh, yeah, like, I talked to this person about the game, and now they're aware of it."
mhm. Yeah, you bring up a good point. I think it's really hard, if not impossible, to actually calculate like what is that conversion rate on things that are sort of disconnected, right? You play a game with someone, and who knows, right? They may have gone on and bought 1,000 copies, but you will never know that. So it's really, yeah, it's building brand awareness or game awareness that we kind of can get a gauge for. But even that, like we don't even know who's heard of any of our games, and we probably never will know, which is okay.
Mhm. You bring up, the fact that there's a difference between, like, brand awareness and game awareness. which one do you think is more important?
Ah, um, for a first-time creator, 100% game awareness. I don't even think so. Looking back to when we launched Rival Restaurants, uh, I don't think anyone knew or cared like what the brand was, right? What was Gap Closer Games? Because in reality, there wasn't really a company. It was just the publisher behind the game. And I think about like in today's marketplace, now that I'm in industry, I'm a lot more aware of who publishers are and sort of what to expect from their games. Um, but that's not something that most, I think, consumers really think about, right? Like for me, growing up, or I guess not growing up, when I was later in life, Ticket to Ride, Settlers of Catan, Splendor. I had no idea who the publisher was, right? I just knew that the game for what it was, and then eventually, even talking about like the designers and the artists, I think those are very niche, um, like observations that people have and connect with. Like I know people who will buy a game just solely based on the publisher or solely based on the designer. But I think early on, you're just trying to get the name of the game out there. And once you can build out, I think, a network. I mean, with you with Weird Giraffe, like you've got a portfolio of games, so the brand starts to matter more and more as you grow that portfolio. But early on, it's all about just the game.
So, when you're like deciding to go between like game awareness and brand awareness, like what kind of things do you have to like switch up? Because like it is probably different like doing marketing for a game versus a brand, right?
Yeah. So I think it's so oftentimes I would argue that a publisher's first game tends to define their brand, right? So I'll use our example, right? So our first game was, a cooking game. It was, real time, competitive. It had this sort of party slash strategy feel, right? When we actually started talking about our next game, this whole question of like, is our brand rival restaurants, or is there something that we can draw from the game that makes our brand? So when we market, it's I think understanding what it is about your games that people are drawn to, because like we're not looking for people to associate gap closer games with the type of games we make because we've only made one or two. We're looking for people to know just like what it is about rival restaurants that's exciting, and can we bring that same messaging as we talk about other games, right? Totally different games, but still the same emotions that are evoked from playing the game. So I don't think I have enough experience with brand building to really say like how do you make that transition when it comes to organic reach.
I really like where you talk about the emotions behind the game, because I think that's something really important for brands. Well, especially when people are trying to like figure out what their brand is. I know that like right now, well, I have the two companies, and they just came about and what we're doing and everything, but like figuring out what that brand is one of the things that I'm trying to like identify so I can like make decisions better.
Mm,
um so like well, one reason why somebody would want like the same brand is like if somebody liked the first game they might like the second game. um is there anything in particular like that you would look for, like if somebody was trying to be like, okay, what is my brand?
um, so I think some of the easy ones are the component quality expectation, right? So I think chip theory games is a good example of this, right? You kind of know what type of quality you're going to get in any of their games, right? It's going to be whether it's Too Many Bones or I forget the most recent game that came out, maybe like last year. You're going to get high quality components and that. Now, is that enough to define a brand? I don't know. I think they're more the exception than the rule. So I would say it's got to be the style of game that we're playing, right? So if your first game is, a trick taking card game and it's, this two-player experience, and then your next game is some space race 8-player 8-hour experience, you're not going to have much crossover there. So it's knowing what you want to concentrate on and what you want to lean into early on, and then building around it. Now, you made a comment about like when you have a lot of games, like do you have two brands? Um, I forget the name of the publisher, but there's a publisher who has an off-brand called, is it Smirk and Dagger? I want to say
Yeah. There's Smirk and Dagger and Smirk and Laughter.
last year, right? So they did a really differentiating between those two, so you know kind of what to expect when you walk into that, and keeping it right under that same umbrella brand, if you will. So I think segmenting is really smart, because you want to communicate to your customer like, hey, this is the kind of game you expect. So if you love our game from Smirk and Laughter, you may not love our game from Smirk and Dagger because it's going to be a different feel. So they don't feel kind of like wronged or cheated for buying something under the false pretense.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely agree that like Kurt who runs those companies, like he did
Mhm.
fantastically with that, because like you can just tell like from the name, like you hear the name and you kind of know like what the games will be. Like
Mhm.
Smirk and Laughter is obviously more friendly than Smirk and Dagger.
Exactly.
So, going back to marketing, what kind of organic marketing do you think is the most effective? Like, if you have to like focus in like one thing, like either like bringing your game around to play with people, or being on social media, or something else.
Um, what's the most effective? I think would be bringing the game to for people to play, right? And we talk about word of mouth, right? Word of mouth is really fully dependent on the product itself, right? If you have a game that people enjoy playing, um, it will do its thing, right? People love talking about what they love playing. So I think knowing that um, you have to experience something to want to talk about it. For me, like as much as like social media is great and you can reach a lot of people, you're always telling them about your game as opposed to letting them experience your game. So I think the best organic marketing is to, again, when we can, all right, hit the pavement, meet as many people as you can, rather whether it be conventions, whether it be local game groups, whether it be demo at your friendly local game store, and get people to experience the game. Because then, right, it's not about making that sale, it's about building awareness. And then down the line, when they see it on social media, when they hear people talking about it, they can have that sort of personal connection with it. I think that's why, I mean, conventions, right? We have demos all the time. They're super, super valuable, because and this is actually sort of a tangent to your question. One thing that we learned through conventions, when you teach someone how to play a game, right? So if I sit down with you and I teach you how to play a game, even if you don't like love the game or think it's the greatest thing ever, I've eliminated a huge barrier of why people don't play new games, which is learning the game. So being able to do that, now they have confidence that, hey, if I pick this game up, I can teach my friends how to play it. Like, oh, I think that they'll enjoy this game, and they've experienced both how the game plays and the experience of playing the game, as well.
Yeah, I think that is a fantastic point, because I know like I definitely well, I have the shelf of games that I don't know how to play yet. Um and like that shelf, like getting a game off there is so hard, just because like I know it'll be like so much more effort to
Hmm.
learn and teach somebody else that game while I'm also learning, than to just take a game that I know how to play, or like even if I've played it like 2 or 3 years ago, like I
Hmm.
don't know offhand how to play it, but I know that I had fun and I played it at one time, so I can play it again.
Exactly. Well said. Well said.
So, how do you go about like finding people to like just play your game with?
Um, Carefully. So it's so interesting, right? What we're talking about, the pre-pandemic world, if you will, where you can go through, what is it? Like Meetup has all these local groups that get together. Different platforms sort of have that in place. I think you've got to know your game and you've got to know your audience. right? So like our game is meant to be very sort of um, entry level and light with enough complexity to keep like the more hardcore gamers engaged, right? Visually, it's very bright, it's very vibrant. The art style suggests like it's very inviting in that sense. So oftentimes when we're at conventions, so I'll go back to our convention life, you're kind of like scanning what people are playing, and it's like, okay, if they're playing so and so game, most likely they'll give this a chance, right? If they're playing something that's a little too hardcore, it's like, I think I know what they like, and if they come to us, we'll let them play, but we're not going to kind of approach them. So I think it's finding the community for your game, which is much harder if you're trying to make more of a mass market type game, because most smart market players or mass market players are not necessarily going to conventions, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't be mass market. So it's I think yeah, really understanding where you can find those people, and that might be at a Comic Con convention, right? Where people who are there may not be into gaming, but they're adjacent and will be more willing to kind of give what you have a chance as well.
I think that's a really good tip because, yeah, like if they're at like a Comic Con or something, they're probably interested in like the nerdy or whatever
Hmm.
things. And that's perfect for, mass market games. Since, board
Hmm.
games are not actually, for, well, not for everyone, but like everyone's not interested in them as much as it might appear when you're like a person in the industry and you just talk
Hmm.
about board games and you play board games all day every day and all your friends do this. Like that's not actually, most of humanity.
Yeah, it's not the world, unfortunately.
So what kind of conventions when we go back into like real life post pandemic, which conventions are your favorite to go to?
Ooh, favorite. So okay, let's see. Our team is based out of Southern California. And we're basically in the LA greater area. So here locally, we have Strategicon, which runs 3 times a year, and it's a good size. I think it's maybe, I don't know, 2,500, 3,000 people. Like I would, when I first went, I thought it was a big convention, but considered a smaller one. That one I enjoy just more so because of the convenience, right? I don't have to stay at a hotel. I don't have to fly. We just drive down and spend time there. Um, we've only been to a handful of conventions really outside of California. The two really being Dice Tower West and PAX Unplugged. So from that pool, right, we haven't done Gen Con, we haven't done Origins. PAX Unplugged was by far my favorite, largely because the food scene in Philly. I mean, it's right next. I think it's called. It's a Grand Central Station. Oh, I forget the exact name
Yeah.
of the food court near. Yeah, like that just elevates the convention because I'm sure you eat once a day at a convention, so it's worthwhile. And just the crowd packed some plus. I do think what I've seen that they're closer to mass. You're more likely to engage people who may not be as deep into the hobby, who for them everything is new and exciting. So for me and my team, we felt more at home at PAX Unplugged than we would at something that's very, very gamer centric, like an SN or a Gen Con.
That's a really good point because, yeah, as you said, like the people that go to Dice Tower, like they are in the hobby. Whereas, of all the big conventions, well, PAX Unplugged, because it's related to PAX, which is more video games, is a lot more entry level. So, if you have to choose like which conventions to go to try to reach people, like thinking about who is actually attending, it's really important, especially when you can, most of us have a finite amount of money and time. Um, but bringing up like the small local conventions as well, like you might only be able to talk to a certain number of people, and even though the convention is small, like you are one person, so Going somewhere that is a lot cheaper and smaller is probably a better bang for your buck, because you're not going to talk to all 3,000 of those
Hmm.
strategicon people, but um, you will like be able to like still stay at home and maybe get cheaper food than if you went to like Origins or Gen Con.
Hmm. Yeah, you make up a good point. I think there's this notion that we hear like, oh, this convention has 50,000 people, and I think we assume, oh, 50,000 people are gonna, see my game. But you're right. At the end of the day, you can only really talk to a finite number of people, and whether it's 100 out of 50,000 or 100 out of 200, it's still the same number of people you get to engage with. So yeah, knowing your limitations, um, manageable is really.
Hmm. Well, and just when you're a new publisher or game designer, you might have like other overlapping things. Like I know like I really like to go to my local conventions because people are like, "Oh, I didn't know there was
Mhm.
a publisher in Huntsville." Like that's really cool because like then they get also that
Um,
whole like we're both from the same place, so I want you to succeed because we live near each other, or I mean, like, it sounds weird and I don't fully understand it, but also when I find like a cool, like, local nerdy thing, I go spend money there so they stay there. Um,
yep.
so like we all like want the people that are like near us to also benefit,
Mhm.
um, for whatever reason. So um I don't know, it could be another way to connect to people. Whereas like going to Gen Con and they're like, oh yeah, I'm from a different country. So maybe I don't care as much. I don't know.
Yeah, I like that. I think there is the familiarity that matters to people. I think just having that personal connection. I mean, seeing the person behind the brand. Like I can tell you, right, designers and artists that I've met, I feel more. I mean, it's weird. I feel more connected to their games than I would otherwise. And especially, I think in our community, right, where you have these what I would consider big name designers, but like you can like talk to them on on Facebook. Like you don't have that kind of access in most other industries that we do in gaming, and it matters. I think people do really appreciate and value that, and it's even cooler when that designer or publisher is from your hometown, right? Went to your high school, like there's that nice personal touch there.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like, well, at this point in time, I would say like most of the games I buy, like 50% of them are probably because, I know the artist or the designer or the publisher. Like, once you start making friends, you're like, oh yeah, I know this person and I want their game because I like them. And,
Hmm.
well, you get all these happy thoughts. Like, whenever I play one of my friends' games that they designed, I'm like, oh yeah, I do have a friend and this is their game and I'm proud of them, or like all the happy feelings
Hmm.
that go along with that. So, um, yeah, well, especially for people that aren't in the industry too, because they don't have the 100 designer friends. Well, because once you start making designer friends, like you
Yes,
just keep
that's
making them. Um, but if you only have like one or two designer friends, and that's like super special.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
So a lot of organic marketing, before was like meeting people in person. What have you changed in your marketing strategy since the pandemic?
Everything. Um, Honestly, I think there was a sense, especially early on, right? We're 12 months removed from, I guess 13 months from the start. I think in the beginning there was a sense of like, we'll just wait it out, right? This too will pass, and we'll go back to normal. And then at some point you realize like, okay, this is gonna be longer than a few months. Hopefully, so for us, right, we always looked at conventions, right? It's really, for three purposes, right? One is organic marketing, one is play testing, and the last one is networking, right? Whether it be other publishers, other people. So we've kind of converted to like the whole, Tabletopia, tabletop simulator model to do play testing. Granted, we're at a stage in our company where I mean, we literally launched our second campaign in February of last year, right? I think the last week of the campaign was when like pandemic hit the U.S. hard, and everything went into lockdown, which was actually lucky for us because the stuff that we needed in terms of face-to-face interactions all took place before that. Right, we didn't really miss out on the conventions and the playtesting and whatnot. Um, then we enter design for the next game, which is all in house, right? You don't really take it places, or at least it wasn't at a stage where we can really take it places. And just now we're at a point with this next title that we're gonna start playtesting. So I'm like hesitant to do the digital playtesting format because it's different. Like it's like I there's some really nice pros where we make a change and it's like instant. I don't have to print and cut more cards. But I think getting people to play it online always feels harder than it should be. So most of our organic reach during the pandemic has really been just more so around fostering conversations around the products that are already released, right? So finding innovative ways to engage with our audience, finding ways to connect to new audiences, which a lot of it has been, thankfully, like just through, Instagram and even TikTok, trying to find ways to post about the game and get the awareness out there. But it's been very like I don't know, like removed, right? Because I don't know who's seeing the post. We'll engage with comments and things of that nature. But we haven't had to do marketing for a new product during the pandemic yet. So that's going to be a challenge for us in the next few months.
Yeah, for sure. I will definitely second that there's pros and cons to TTS because gosh, I'm glad I can playtest, but I do not enjoy it as much and all the variety of
Hmm.
feedback where you have to figure out if it's TTS or your game or
Yeah.
the fact that we've been in a pandemic for 1 year. Um, I'm gonna be so happy when I don't like have that in the back of my mind. Like, oh yeah, is this game too complicated or are we all just too stressed for games now?
Mm,
Just in general.
yeah,
Um,
that's a fair point.
so you brought up Instagram. Are there any other platforms that you like to use?
Sorry, say it again. You cut out a little bit.
Oh, are there any other platforms other than Instagram that you like to use?
So the two primary ones are for us Facebook and Instagram. Facebook is primarily where I would say like I engage personally with different Facebook groups, right? Whether it be like advice groups, whether it be board game groups. But that's more of a just I think getting more like my feet more into the industry and getting to meet different people. Very rarely through those encounters do I think or worry about the game or the brand itself. It's more so just I think from a networking standpoint, trying to meet new people and kind of see, learn from them, see what they're doing. On Instagram, it's primarily, it's a company account that's, posting pictures and engaging with content. Um, Twitter is too confusing for me. So we don't do much with Twitter. We have it, and it's mostly for people to like send us a message or ask questions if things come up. And then we've just recently started dabbling in TikTok. Um, I think we're of actually TikTok, but it's been really cool. I think meeting different personalities who are like new to TikTok and have kind of grown a really cool niche within that space, and just seeing how it's a different audience, it's a different style it's a different medium, and there's a lot of opportunities for us just even observe it and see how people work there. So, otherwise, mainly Facebook and Instagram.
You you are definitely braver than me because I have not taken the TikTok step. I don't know. At this point, I kind of feel like maybe I'm too old for like I don't know that new social media the kids are doing, the TikToks and the Snapchats and whatnot. I'm really not that old, but it's like I don't know. I don't know. It's just the point where like everyone gets to where they're
Uh-huh.
like, oh, too much technology, not doing it. Um, Um,
It's funny. So I was talking to some kids about how TikTok is cool now, but in 3 years they're going to be like us, where it's like like TikTok is so 2020 or whatever it's going to be. But yeah, it's a different space for sure.
so, on that same note, what's a way that you like to make marketing more fun?
Ooh. Um, so I think for me, I try to create content that is engaging, right? So, like, as much as it's like cool for me to be like, hey, check out this game, check out this character, like here's information about it. I really enjoy things where it's like, hey, what did you play this weekend, right? What did you have for dinner? Like, things that kind of cause your audience to want to engage with you. So that's one way I think making it more exciting. Another way I think is through some type of like incentive driven campaigns. So, hey, share this, do this, click this, and then we're going to just, pick someone and, send them this. Right. So kind of gamifying the experience and letting them sort of feel like they're a part of it, instead of just kind of like, being bombarded with information about the game and what we're doing and what it's about.
So, what kind of gamification do you do? Do you like send people free games, or is it something else you send them?
Yeah, so the so the most recent one we did was we did like a board game haul giveaway, right? We basically were like, just because you exist, we're gonna pick one of you, and you'll go on $150 like shopping spree. And it was really cool because it was like, hey, like go to your store, buy the game, seat, right? And I've been wanting to, it's been so like this is really helpful. The one that I think I really liked is at the end of last year, we did a play it forward campaign where essentially we asked, and this was mainly targeted at our backers. We asked them to basically send in like a story about someone in their life who's had a tough 2020, right? Who, whether it be health related, job related, anything related, and kind of share that story with us. And then we would pick a few of those stories and just send them a free copy of the game. And we ended up getting like over 100 entries, which was like so heartwarming to read. And what I really liked about it was asking our backers to tell us about someone in their life, right? Not for themselves. And we had spouses, children, parents, coworkers, whomever it may be, and then we picked about a dozen or so winners, and then we actually got on a call with them and like did like a Zoom surprise, which was so cool to see. And I think just to see the friends be like, oh, like I had no idea that like you thought of me, that's really really sweet of you. So that was a really cool experience where we got to kind of know our backers a little bit better. And through the process, we got to sort of meet a few new cool people whom we still kind of talk to randomly from time to time now. So those are kind of the two most recent examples that we've been able to do.
I think that idea is like so cool. Like, just getting somebody to talk about somebody else, because then you make, well, not only do you make like the one person like you more, but
Mhm.
like also their friend now knows that you exist. And you get to help out people. Like, it's just all around really cool. Um, Nick had a
Mhm.
question. How do you know if a particular organic marketing campaign is working?
You don't. um, how do you know if it's working? So I think it's important to sort of establish like objectives, right? When you go into it, right? So if your objective is, hey, I want to grow our mailing list, right? I want to grow our follower count. These things need to be fairly tangible that you can kind of calculate. I think what is it? They talk about SMART goals, like measurable,
Mhm.
attainable, etc. And what we'll do is we keep pretty good track of like what our growth rate is, say from a newsletter standpoint, follower standpoint on different platforms. So then when we initiate some type of campaign, we can see the impact of that campaign. If you're already in the sales cycle, so you're making sales, whether it be pre-orders or live sales, you have enough data to see how you perform over a certain period of time, and you can kind of right measure the impact of that campaign. So it just depends on what you're trying to do with it. It's important to track that data over time and then see, okay, well, I see, there was a spike here. We can probably attribute most of that spike to this event. Now, you might be wrong, right? It might be something completely unrelated to what you did, but more often than not, it's pretty easy to gauge how something impacted. One thing that we do is, we have Google Analytics on the back end of our websites, so we can see how traffic flows in and out as we do different things. Unfortunately, I haven't figured out a way to do that with like our Facebook page or our Instagram page as seamlessly. But there's a lot of tools that kind of help you measure engagement over time.
That is definitely interesting because, like, I know I've always wondered, like, oh, what did I do, or which one of these 5 things that happened this week really impacted it. But I think I'm gonna try to start like making, like, I don't know, an Excel file of like the history so I actually know when things happened because
hmm
it's not like I can remember when I got to a certain amount of followers.
Well, as an example, actually, so recently, so okay, so our game is obviously distributed worldwide, but our main markets are going to be U.S., Canada, Europe, etc. But we had like this spike of visitors from the Netherlands, and I was like, that's random. We're talking like 3,000%. Now, granted, we're talking from 10 people to to Mars. It's not that big a number. And I was like, oh, this is so bizarre. And then I realized someone did Instagram drive traffic first of them. All these influencers in the Netherlands reached out to us. I'm like, hey, I heard about your game. Like, is there a way for us to collaborate? And it was like this really measurable event of how it's driving people to us. People within the space are now learning about us. And it's kind of like, oh, like, hey, we can, then sort of lean into this and get a few more copies out there, and drive the narrative in the Netherlands that everyone's, thinking about, talking about, seeing. And you end up looking bigger than you are in terms of, actual scale. Those are really cool. Where when I see these like weird spikes, I'm always like what happened? Like, did someone, make a tweet? Did someone post a video? And usually you can figure out the answer pretty well, especially when it's so regional based. Um, it's hard in the US to figure it out, but most countries you can figure it out.
So how often do you actually check your analytics to like find those spikes?
Um, I probably maybe 2, 3 times a month. I only really check them if I notice a spike in like because our stats are being monitored daily, like they show up. And if I see like, oh, like today we had a influx of sales, I'll kind of dig in and see like, oh, like what happened, right? So the data is there, which is nice. Even if I don't do it, I can go back in time and look through it. But I always kind of have to ask myself like, is it actionable data, right? So like if something is happening, but like we can't do anything about it, then it's like it's nice to know, but unless you can actually act on it, I don't really then see the point in tracking the data um, for the sake of just knowing numbers.
That's really good too. Well, because like I mean, you could track everything, but you also have like a finite amount of brain
hmm
power. So, um, tracking it when you can actually do something about it,
Yeah.
or paying attention when you can do something about it, is
hmm
important. So, do you have any like just overall general marketing tips?
Overall marketing tips. Organic or
Any of it.
so this is something that I learned later that I wish I would have known in the beginning, and I forget where I heard it, so I feel bad I can't give credit to the original idea. But essentially, it came down to know your audience and advertise to that audience very clearly. And I think so, and what that really meant was, um, if you're making a game that is, real-time negotiations, right? Be very clear your game is real-time negotiations. Market it as such, because if all you want to do is make a sale and you could, omit that information, you're going to have dissatisfied customers. So when it comes to, like, it's not about trying to reach everyone with your marketing. It's trying to reach those who will most likely enjoy your product. Because at the end of the day, right, I don't want to sell my game to someone who just has no interest in food, has no interest in real time, has no interest in, negotiating. Like, if these are key aspects of your game, it that still hurts you, right? Because now you have this narrative of like, oh, this game is horrible. Like, there's all these things in it, and it's like, well, yeah, they're there, and they're not for everyone. And I think that's another thing I would say. Not every game is for everyone, and that's like okay. If every game was for everyone, then it's probably not a great game. It's just a good game. So I think it's really understanding your messaging needs to be consistent, and you want to know your audience as well as you can. Like, you make some assumptions and figure them out, but really try to be upfront about what you're giving them, so that when they receive it, they're like, yeah, like, this is exactly what I thought it was going to be, and I loved it. Or this didn't do a good job of delivering what it was supposed to be. Like, that's a fair criticism. But it's really painful when it's like, well, like, that's what the game is. Like, what did you expect?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like, well, that the overall goal should be like getting your game to people that will like it.
Hmm.
Because, I mean, getting like ratings of 0 on BGG or like just angry people like might go do like angry things online, and that's not going to help you. Um,
Hmm.
either you or like your mental health. Like, nobody wants
Hmm.
that. Um, so yeah, just trying to get the customers that will love you and your game, and hopefully they love your brand and then buy everything.
Hmm.
So, in addition to being a publisher and designer, you're also on the GAMA board.
Hmm.
What's that like?
Um, it's fun. It's a lot more work than I think I would have envisioned. So I currently serve as the treasurer. So, a lot of the work really is more so around the finances, which, it's been a hard year to make sure we kind of manage that. But I've really enjoyed, I think, working with the team and, learning about the organization, right? Because prior to joining the board, I mean, I knew about GAMA, but, I wasn't a member as an individual, nor was our company a member. But I thought it was important that, right, if we have this sort of, kind of the, I don't know, the organizing body, if you will, of the industry, that if I can help, I can try and help. And I think I've seen, the rest of the board and the staff really, are passionate about making, board games more and more a thing. So people who have never heard of them or have differing opinions about them can kind of get a, more access to it. Um, it's been it's been a lot of meetings, so like which is half my life is meetings now. But it's been cool, I think, to see, like, the organization take active steps in really, like, serving the members and what their interests are, while still making some tough decisions about, like, what is Gamma supposed to be, and what are we prioritizing, and how do we move the conversations where they need to be.
That's really interesting. I've only really well, I've gone to like the Gamma convention, and I've gone to
Mhm.
Origins a bunch of times. But like I've never really known about the board or like what they do. It's kind of like a nebulous thing.
Hey, the meetings are open. I always have to remind people you can just show up and sit there. Yeah, I think that's actually one thing that's the perception is that Gamma is just the trade show and Origins, right? And in theory, that's kind of the two main things that they do, and two main things that people think about. But it's like, how do you move the organization beyond that, especially when you can't have a trade show and you can't have Origins in the way that we're used to. So they do a lot of work with education. They do a lot of work for networking and supporting retailers, right? It's not just publishers, right? Publishers, retailers, wholesalers, designers, media, all of these things. So I think that has been, I think, a big part of our mission this year is to expand just the services that Gamma offers to a wider pool of participants within the industry, so they can say like, hey, like this is a valuable thing for me to be a part of, and feeling like you're actually a part of the community as opposed to just one cog in this whole thing.
I think that's really cool. But like trying to make it more of like a big like everyone's part of a community sort of thing. I kind of noticed where they were like, well, when I went to Gamma, they have on the badges like whether you're a designer or
Mhm.
publisher or manufacturer or whatever. And I thought that was really cool because like before I went, I didn't even know that designers, should go
Mm.
or
Yeah,
that
that's true.
so. But that was probably just me not knowing things about like this organ or this industry that we're in.
But I think it's a fair point. I think we assume people know things, and in truth, like there's only so much information we can retain. So yeah, I think we have to be intentional and explicit about like what is Gamma, so that people can then make a decision as to how to participate, whether to join, what values they can really draw from it.
Mhm. Well, I know that I tell everyone to be a Gamma member just because you get the um cheap booth for Origins. I think it like just pays for itself if you're going to go to Origins anyway. So might as well get all the other benefits
Hmm.
as well. So is there anything else that you're passionate about in board game design or publishing?
Oh, in board games and publishing. I think for me, what's really exciting actually has been like just the crowdfunding model for like what I consider like true crowdfunding needs, right? So that first time publisher, really, really cool idea, and they want to bring it to market. So I spend a lot of my time trying to sort of do for them what was done for me, right? So we walked into, I mean, we walked into this industry with no experience in publishing, manufacturing, like any of that stuff, right? And I spent probably 6 months sort of just like devouring like the Stonemeyer blog and all the different groups, all of this content, and just like trying to figure like what does all this look like. So I'm really passionate about sort of like helping people sort of navigate the water, and I always say like I'm not going to give them the answers because I don't have the answers, but I'm going to help them ask the right questions, right? Because you see someone who comes in, they're like, the question might be like, hey, like how do I make a game? It's like, okay, so it's a pretty broad question, right? Here's all the different things that go into it. Um, that's probably the area that I really like to concentrate on, and try to just help people find the right questions to ask, and then connect them with people who can provide those answers. So that's the area that I love the most probably within this industry.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely I second the whole like the fact that a lot of people are like asking questions but it might not be the right question because like if they would just
Hmm.
ask the right question they could get to the answer that they need super fast but like
Hmm.
knowing the right question and who to ask is sometimes super difficult especially when you're new and
Hmm.
like this industry is not like other industries it's so weird in so many ways um so like just being able to go out there and start asking questions is uh I don't know, just what people have to do.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, you're putting yourself out there, and I think also, right, these are very different skill sets. Being a designer It's not the same thing as being an artist. It's not the same thing as being a marketer or a developer or, the logistics expert. Like there are so many skill sets that are needed in this hobby. And I think because most people get into it from the design stand, right? Like very few people who are like, oh, I'm into business. I want to make a board game. Like that doesn't happen very often, right? So it's important to know your skill set, know your limitations, right? Like I don't do any art for a game because I'm not a very good artist. And even on the design field are two lead designers who really build out the world and put it all together. And I really just step in with like the that's going to cost too much to make. Let's let's figure things out, right? Like the development side of things. But yeah, connecting people and knowing that it does take like a village to make a game and bringing people together to watch when you have like friends get together, make a game, and pick up all those pieces and bring it to life.
Yeah. I think that's all just super wonderful. Well, especially like that we all have limitations and that's fine. Like we're human.
Mm,
We can't do everything perfectly and being a publisher means, having 35 hats. And you can if you try to do them all, you're going to do something very poorly and that's just how it is. Um, but yeah.
mhm.
So, uh what is one thing that, like, if you could have known at the beginning of like this board game publishing and design journey, like what would you wish that you could have known earlier?
That a pandemic was coming. Uh, let's see. One thing I would have known. Um, this is maybe more of a technical answer, but what I've learned over the course of publishing is moving physical objects around the world is really tedious, really expensive, and really intensive. So I think like understanding that is so important because I mean, even from a cost standpoint, like that, it's like it costs more to move the game than to make the game half the time, right? So I think understanding that early on and even designing with that in mind can make such a big difference. Understanding what 50 pallets of games looks like, like just physically, it's hard to sort of I think visualize that in our head. But I think from a marketing standpoint. And I think I learned this early on. This whole notion of like no one's gonna steal your idea, right? There's this hesitation of like I don't want to talk about it because what if someone you know takes it and runs with it, and sort of like not using that design process as a marketing process. You end up wasting a lot of time when you really should be like, no, talk about your game, get it out there. If it changes, it changes. Don't worry. Like all that stuff will take place, but let people experience it because it's good for the game itself and it's good for building out that awareness. So yeah, I think we probably kept it under wraps longer than we should have before being ready and then bringing it out to the world.
Mhm. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like, well, I when I was like starting out, I would just like I didn't know how to use Twitter, so I just posted all the things I was doing all the time, and I got so much feedback. But then afterwards, like when it got to the Kickstarter, I got like a number of people that were just super passionate, and like I asked why, and they're like, "Well, I saw your first, version of this where you
Oh,
like hand drew it, and you took some of my advice or something like along the way and just like getting to see that journey can get people so invested.
hmm, that's
Mm,
awesome. Yeah, yeah, that's organic, right? That's building a community around your product, and then they feel like they are a part of it because they are.
mhm. Well, and also about that whole like 50 pallets and what it actually looks like cuz like I have made that mistake like for Tumbletown we got a storage unit for it and the storage unit was so many feet but pallets don't always work like you think they do, and, you
Oh.
know, board games are not a fluid, so we had to figure that out. It
Oh
was
no.
fine, we had a lot of games that did not fit in the storage unit and ended up in our house, but it was fine in the end, and a lesson was learned.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
Yeah, it's a lot of games.
so many games. Um, anything, exciting happening for you in the future?
So we have another game releasing in I say summer. I don't know when it's gonna happen. Sometime this year, hopefully. We haven't really officially talked about until already. But yeah, I think kind of gearing up for that is something that we're working on. Um, and I'm getting vaccinated in a few days, which is exciting. Um, so hopefully, I think I'm feeling better and better about like where the state of the world will be, by the end of the year. Will conventions be back? I don't know, but at least we're moving in the right direction. I think that'll ease a lot of people's just stress levels and overall mindset. Like I have been like completely blessed through this whole thing. Like my job hasn't been impacted. I don't have to drive as much, so like it's been really good for our family. But there's plenty of people who haven't had the same luxury through this. So looking forward to things resuming some type of normalcy.
Yeah, I cannot wait to, like, play games in person. It'll be so great. Um, if people wanna find you after this, where can they find you?
So on really any social media platform, it's at Gap Closer Games. And our website is gapcloserpublishing.com. So you can check us out there. You can send me a note. I'll be happy to answer what I can. But yeah, you can find me in a few Facebook groups lurking around.
Mhm. Well, thank you so much for being here. I know I learned a lot, and was reminded of a lot of things I probably should have known already. But that's part of the learning process. So thank you so much for being here. For everyone watching, we do this every Sunday at 2 p.m. And you can join the Discord at weirddraftgames.com/Discord. So have a good weekend, everyone.
Thank you. This was such a fun time. Really appreciate it, Carla. We'll talk
Yeah,
soon.
mhm. You're wonderful.